So we have opportunity on this International Women's Day to reflect on this passage, one of the many encounters that people have with Jesus that are recorded in John's Gospel. It's a woman with a bucket as an encounter with Jesus. The text starts, earlier than was read to us, with the phrase, he had to go through Samaria. No, he didn't. He could have crossed the Jordan and gone up the east side of the River Jordan and then back over into Galilee. That is what most rabbis would do. That is what people who had been to the temple in Jerusalem and offered their sacrifice, and therefore they had purified themselves, they would go that way around, because to go to Samaria would impure. It was a despised place. They were a despised people. Why? Because 500 years earlier, the Assyrians had come and they defeated the northern kingdom of Israel. They'd taken all the key people away. They'd left what you might call the riffraff. They brought people from other places. They'd been into marriage. And now those people could not be Jews. They were impure. Moreover, the only texts that they had were the 5 first books, the Pentateuch, the books of Moses. As for the rest, the Psalms, the Kings, the Chronicles, the prophets, they didn't have anything to do with them. So there was this sense of fear by the Samaritans and hate by the Jewish nation for these people. So when it says that Jesus had to go through Samaria, no, he didn't. He chooses to go through Samaria, to this land of despised people. And by his very presence there, he is reaching out across the cultural, religious barriers to the people who live there. It's an illustration of how we deal with the people we disagree with. And Jesus seeks to engage with them. He deliberately places himself at a point where people come. And he wants to talk to the inhabitants of this community. Now, his disciples, Sychar, it's called a city. Well, it would be a small town, really. And it's about halfway between Jerusalem and Galilee. The disciples go hunting for food. They've heard the rumor there's a spa down the road. Or was it a Lidl or an Aldi? Anyway, they go there. The Waitrose is back in Jerusalem. And what happens in this passage is unusual, it's controversial, it's inspirational. Jesus is sat at the well. A woman comes in the heat of the day, and seeing a Jewish man sat there, she would have expected harassment or humiliation. But something quite different happens. Something gracious, something life-changing, something very unusual. Sadly, we do not know this woman's name. Wouldn't that be good? Has she come in the heat of the day to avoid others? Has she come in the heat of the day because she's shunned by her community? Has she come in the heat of the day because normally, were she to come in the morning when people normally come in the cool of the day to fetch water, or at the end of the day? If you come at those times, then to be gossiping and pointing backbiting. Now, we don't know, but probably that is why. We later learn that she's had 5 husbands and is living with a man who is not her husband. And it's often assumed in the text, in the writings, and by some preachers, that she's a woman of loose morals. But perhaps not. In Mosaic law, if a husband died, then the woman was passed to the next oldest brother to be his wife, and so on to another brother if he died. For a widow had no rights, no property, no income, no money, no dowry, no hope. So maybe she'd be passed from brother to brother and then to any man who would take her. And is the man she now lives with, is he sheltering her? Is he offering her security? Is he caring for her, part of his wider family? Or is he abusing her? She's probably an older woman. People didn't live then as long as they do now, so maybe she's in her 30s, 40s. I want to say that in all likelihood, this woman is sinned against. It's not what the text says, but neither does the text say she was a loose woman. But what do we learn about her? We learn she's educated. She understands the Mosaic law. She must be able to read. She's been in a place of learning. She's confident in speaking with a Jewish rabbi. She knows the religious differences between the Samaritans and the Jews. And she's perceptive. She makes a connection between Jesus' conversation and the coming of the Messiah. She's willing to learn, to understand and to grasp the implications of the truth that Jesus is sharing with her. As I've said, I think she's sinned against. Sin was all around her in the relationships that people had and the way that they dealt with others, then and now. And yet, she speaks confidently to this Jewish rabbi who has asked her for a drink. Now, as I prepared this sermon, I was going to note at this point, and shall now, that sin is everywhere in the news. Accusations of sleaze, evidence of people being trafficked across continents for so-called pleasure, evidence of sex tourism in the Far East, in which middle-aged men from Europe and America go on holiday and they can buy a young boy or a young girl for sexual activity for the price of a pair of flip-flops. And Epstein and Al Fayed, who seem to be in a posher league, nevertheless sleazy, no less abusive apparently to vulnerable women. Sin is at large in our communities. Many people are suffering from it, and I'm conscious that in a congregation of this size, and certainly online, that people listening may have suffered abuse, domestic abuse. They may have been trafficked. They may have suffered physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. I want you to know that Jesus weeps with you. Jesus seeks your healing and wholeness. Then and now, people are sinned against. And if that is the case, then reach out to a trusted person. Well, that's what I prepared some weeks ago. But this week, we have been overtaken by the foolishness of war. A war prompted by hate and a desire for vengeance. I want to say very clearly here, there is nothing righteous about bombing the people you hate. There is nothing righteous about attempting regime change from the air. There is nothing righteous about an unlawful war. Of course, we need justice. Of course, we need right governance. And there are many reasons why the Iranian regime is corrupt and has recently shot hundreds, probably thousands of protesters. They have, over the last few decades, brought enormous harm to their people. But corruption and harm is not confined to Iran. There are powerful leaders and despotic leaders in various parts of the world, but frankly, we don't go and bomb them. What we do need to do is to debate and encourage and urge, and ensuring governments and leaders govern for the common good. And yes, we may need to take action to isolate those who are bringing danger and injustice to their people. For instance, in Ukraine, I believe we're right to support the Ukrainian war effort against a powerful aggressor, because the aim is to defend the country and its people and to bring about peace through proper negotiation. Here, this candle, this United Nations flag, this very place where the United Nations began 80 years ago. Yes, we ought to have sanctions against various places. Though there's despotic regimes around the world, I do believe there are situations in which countries might, as a last resort, engage in what you might call a just war. But the basis of that is seeking peace and seeking the common good of all people. So a just war is not about venting your frustration and hate, for we will undoubtedly see a cycle of violence in the Middle East. But we are right, and have done, to pray for peace and justice and right governance. So in the terms of this text from John 4, bring your bucket, but don't throw it at your enemy. Share a pail full of peace and justice and hope. So, back to John chapter 4. The woman, the rabbi, the well, and the bucket. Jesus asked simply for a drink. And before you know it, there's a conversation about living water, spiritual refreshment and worship. The woman is surprised about this conversation, but also perceptive. I see you are a prophet, she says. We worship at Mount Gerizim, and you in Jerusalem. And then Jesus says, for salvation is of the Jews. And one of the problems about the text is that it doesn't give us the tone of voice of Jesus. Is he making a statement of truth, salvation is of the Jews, or is he with a tone of irony, saying, actually, if you go to Jerusalem, they say salvation is of the Jews, but the day is coming when all people in any place shall be able to worship in spirit and truth. And it's here. And the woman says, she gets it. She says, yes, I know the Messiah is coming. And Jesus says to her, I who speak to you am he. And then there's an abrupt end to the conversation. She goes back to the city, leaving her bucket. The disciples, they turn up, the well, Jesus, bucket. They're confused. Why is it, Jesus? You're talking to a woman in public. What on earth do you want from her? But she's gone back to the city. She's talking to her neighbors. They perceive there's something different about her because they believe the woman's testimony. A really important phrase in this story. For actually, the testimony of a woman was of no account. In Luke's Gospel, in chapter 24, it says in our English versions, they didn't believe the women about the resurrection because they thought it was an idle tale. And literally, the translation should be, they thought they heard women's talk. Right? Not to be believed. No woman could bring a testimony in a Jewish court of law or a Samaritan court of law. But they hear her. Why? Because a transformation has taken place in this woman's life as a result of the conversation with Jesus. And so she says, come and see. Come and see. Is what Jesus says to John's disciples who are intrigued by him. Come and see is what what Philip says to Nathanael. And that's what she says to her neighbors. She leaves her bucket. And she, in fact, says to her neighbors, bring your bucket of faith. Come and see. Come to the well of forgiveness. Come to the well of hope. Come to the fount of grace. Drink the waters of comfort and security. Come and see what God has done. Come to the well of guidance. Come and drink deeply of God's mercy. Come and see God's grace in action. Come and find well-being. Come to the place of justice. Come to the person of peace. This is righteousness. To know Jesus, to follow Jesus. A Jesus who, as we come to him in faith and hope, puts us in the right, that we may be right and we may do right. And then they go and they tell. Dear friends, we come, as it were, with the bucket of faith. I encourage you to come to the well. Come to the well and find hope and salvation. Come to find well-being and wholeness. Come to find forgiveness and mercy. Come to find justice and peace. Come to find a God who puts things right in our lives. Come to find a God who gives us hope in our lives. Come to find a God who gives us future come to find a God who puts us in company with other God's people that we may grow in fellowship and deepen in discipleship. Come. Come in faith and find that Jesus who wants to meet with you, who wants to deepen your discipleship, that we may live righteous lives, that we may be right with God, that we may do right in our lives. And then, let us go and tell. Let us go and live it out. In Jesus' holy name, amen.